Hello, welcome to episode 8 of Harmonious World. I'm absolutely delighted this week to be joined by guitarist Rob Luft. I first saw Rob perform at Club 85 in Hitchin probably a year ago and just loved his sound. And I've started listening to him a lot more now. And he's got a new album out called Life is the Dancer. And in fact, you can read my review of that album on kindofjazz.com. The link is in the program notes. So here's my conversation with guitarist Rob Luft.
How's it going?
Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm actually in another country, and I hope
I can see the reflection in the window. You're somewhere weird. Where are you?
You're probably not going to guess if I gave you 1,000 guesses. I'm in Albania.
Oh, okay. No, I wouldn't have guessed. I mind you, I was going to say Italy, so I wasn't a million miles away.
We're about 100 miles away. Not a bad guess, actually, is it?
Very good. Oh, wow. Have you been there through the whole of lockdown?
I wish. No, I've been here for the last 10 days. And the reason is that my partner, Elena, she's a wonderful Albanian jazz singer, and she has a family home in the south of Albania. So obviously it's very warm here and it's next to the beach. So
tough job.
Yeah. Well, while there are no gigs, I mean, I thought to myself, there are no gigs, so forget it, I'm going.
Absolutely. How lovely.
Yeah, how are you?
Very good. Yeah, I'm good.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, when did we, was it about a year ago that we met?
Yeah, it was about a year ago, I think. It was at Club 85 in Hitchin.
Yeah, I really like that place.
It's a great venue. I mean, I think that Bob, who owns it, I think he'll weather the storm. I think he'll be okay.
Yeah.
But hopefully, yeah. So don't know when they'll be able to start up again, though,
I mean, if I can give you some encouraging news, which is that we are, together with Alina, I'm doing a few gigs this month in Europe.
Oh, really?
So that's boding well for the UK to start again in the autumn, I think.
Yeah.
Obviously, these are all outdoor gigs, concerts at the moment, because it's summer festival season in Italy and in France, where you can have outdoor festivals still happening because it's outdoors.
Yeah,
it's not in a sweaty, sticky jazz club.
Yeah.
So hopefully that bodes well for some concerts, some clubs to open again at some point, September, October, with some reduced capacity, I guess. But I think people are going crazy to have live music again, aren't they?
Oh God, do you know what? I was out last week, and there was a group of young lads playing their rock kind of live stuff, but it was a bit shouty and it was a bit rock for me, but it was on the street, and it was like, to hear a band play live music was just incredible.
Yeah, I've actually had before I left 10 days ago, I was having a couple of rehearsals, and it was pretty euphoric to play music again with the bass and drums, the full sound.
Yeah. And got a piano player in Hitchin called Marco Marconi. Have you ever met him or heard him?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because but I know the Italian guys.
Oh, so of course. Yeah. The whole, You're all connected,
mafia.
Aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah, the jazz mafia.
Yeah, but he lives in Hitchin randomly. He moved here a couple of years ago, and
Great.
Yeah, and he's done loads of live stuff, and that's been really nice. But it's still not the same as being in the room.
No, well, as you can see, I've got a lovely microphone and stuff, and I've invested in some equipment because I've done a few live streams with Elena, my partner, in London over the last few months, and also with Alice Savadsky, who's a great singer, who's come round a couple of times over the last month. We've done a couple of live streams, and it's good. It's better than nothing, but it's not the same.
It's not the same. No.
So there's nothing that can replace that sort of euphoric connection of musicians playing together with an audience in the same room. It's a real sort of uplifting experience, I think, that can't be replicated.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I mean, I think we've all realized that relationship that we have with music. I mean, I love listening to recordings, and I really enjoy that, but it isn't the same. It just isn't the same.
No, it can't be compared. And I think, like you say, albums are great, and I'm actually quite kind of in a weird sort of way glad that I released my album in this period, because it gave people something to listen to. And
Oh
while there
yeah.
was, it's been a kind of bit of it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. I haven't been able to do any live touring, but I've been able to benefit from the fact that not a lot of new content, to put it sort of bluntly,
Yeah.
new
Oh
musical
yeah.
content is being released at this strange time. So I think people have had the chance to really sit back and enjoy any new albums that have been released, maybe more than
Yeah.
they would have done.
Oh, I think that's true. I mean, I've listened to more, like properly listened to more albums in lockdown than, because I haven't had the time. I have to make time. If I'm going to review something, I have to make time and sit down. But actually now I've had time to kind of put it on and listen to it for a longer period and then come back to it. I've had much more time to do that, so it's really good.
Which is what musicians want you to do anyway. They don't want you to listen to one track on a Spotify
Oh,
playlist. They want you
don't.
to listen,
Yeah.
on a repeated
Yeah.
basis to their music, because like often with albums, you spend months putting little details, like a writer with a book, putting little hidden
Yeah.
microscopic sort of musical details, which only become clear after repeated listens anyway.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that whole thing about listening, I mean, it's not even like it used to be with vinyl, where you'd have like side A and then side B, and it would be like a different. But at least when you listen to a CD and I never ever put shuffle on, because I don't
No, me
like
neither.
that. No, I like being
Especially
able
with
to
bands you love.
yeah,
Especially with a
yeah,
band you love and respect, that they will have
yeah,
put that craft into the album. And I know a lot of people say stuff like, oh, the album is dead, the album is dead. But I'm a full believer that there are still bands, and especially sort of off the mainstream, the jazz
yeah.
bands and good pop bands and good classical composers, that really put that thought into an album being a sort of 45-minute to a 1 hour suite, if you will.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. So let's talk about the album. I absolutely loved it. I
Great, I'm so glad.
Yeah, I did the review for Kind of Jazz,
For
and
Matthew.
for Matt, yeah. So I listened to it. He sent me the link, and I listened to it, and I went, "Oh, I love this." And then I sent, because we fight over who's going to do which review, and I
Yeah.
went, "I really, really want to review this," and he was like, "Oh, well, okay then, all right, I'll let you do it."
Great.
So talk to me about how the recording process, the writing, because again, I think that's what you've just said about, you create a suite of pieces, and it feels like that with
Yeah, I
with
think so.
this one. Yeah, so
I mean, I kind of used the quintet, the live band that you saw last year. I kind of used them as the backdrop to creating a like you say, that sort of 45-minute, 50-minute world that you just dip into, and it without wanting to sound like a kind of musical tourist, it kind of explores different parts of my influences. So you get a bit of Indian classical influence, you get a bit of South African township jazz. It dips in and out of these worlds, because I've been very active as a side man, if you want to call it that, over the
yeah,
last few years, accompanying other people's projects, where I've been lucky enough to travel to Albania with Alina and learn about the traditional music here in Albania, or travel to Italy and learn about the folk music in Napoli and Naples. And I think when I use my quintet, they're kind of like my home stadium almost, where I can bring back all these different influences, and then make this album is a kind of representation of all these different little worlds. And hopefully that comes across as a listener, maybe, I don't know.
and it definitely does. It definitely does. Um, I think that I love the fact that you called it after the Eckhart Tolle book. I love
Yeah.
that book. I love that book.
Yeah, it's a great book. I mean, for me, it was not deliberate that it was going to come out in this period where we, that kind of sort of, I don't know how you call it, pop psychology, sort of spiritualism, it, whatever you want to call his style, is really relevant for a time
Oh,
like now,
completely. Yeah, the power of
where,
now, and just
mm,
being in the moment and living, e- engrossing yourself, immersing yourself in what's going on now, and not worrying about what used to be or what might be.
exactly, it's a day by day sort of process. And I think now, when we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know what's going to happen with the return of live music and with the return of life as we knew it. I think to try and live on a day-to-day sort of basis is really important, and so it's totally inadvertent that the album was called Life is the Dancer in this period, but it's so relevant because we can't really control these circumstances. I didn't choose to be in a lockdown. I had nothing to do with it, and I've had my whole sort of career has been put on hold because of it. But nonetheless, if we can try and find the sort of day-to-day positives, and it's like you say, it's that thing of the past is in your head and the present is in your hands, isn't it? It's that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good message for now, definitely.
I agree, and I think that book, The Power of Now, is so relevant. I know so many people who've rediscovered it during lockdown.
Yeah, and I think the reason I actually called it that was mostly because a lot of the tracks take inspiration from different dance rhythms, from traditional musics and pop music and different parts of the world where I love the various sort of dance rhythms, dance groups from those countries. So that was the real original idea of calling it Life is the Dancer. And the fact that it was a quote from this guy was kind of a bit of a side sort of a kind of afterthought almost. But actually it's spun the other way around now, and the fact of the title has become more relevant than the original reason I named it what it is.
Yeah, but isn't it like you create this music and it takes on a life of its own?
Absolutely, yeah. Especially now, I mean, people used to talk about a 3-month album campaign, a 3-week album campaign. You have this, you release an album and then 3 months it's gone. But now, I think, especially with what's just happened, I think we're looking at least at an 18-month campaign for this album, if not a 3-year campaign. But like you say, it's actually an eternal campaign because you never know at what point one of the songs might be listened to and when it might be relevant in a particular listener's life. And I think hopefully this album, when people listen to it, they'll always remember the lockdown, but also they'll have hopefully it will put a bit of a positive spin on the whole thing, that they've discovered some nice music, some good energy despite everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a real energy about this album, isn't there? I think you're a very generous musician, and it feels like this is a band. This isn't your album. This is the band's album.
Yeah, I mean, it's that old Pat Metheny group sort of mentality where the guitar is at the forefront of the music without being the obvious, the only featured sound or the only featured instrument in the group. It's that sort of band, Pat Metheny, Lyle Mays, sort of, they had that amazing ability to create a full band sound, and trying to do the same here, where the guitar is at the forefront of the sound world, but not just the only featured instrument, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. It's not a Santana kind of thing, is it? You know what I mean? Where he's like right at the front, at the top, the whole time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very much more of a band. And I think with people like Corey Dick in the group, it's very easy to be more kind of textural and more. He's so in the music. He's
incredible, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's just he's not a glory seeker or anything. So many drummers who are real, it's about them or it's about their technique, their virtuosity. Whereas Corey has that, but he never really gives it away. Actually, it's just all about the music.
Definitely. I mean, I think I've seen him. He's been to Club 85, I think 4 or 5 times in the last couple of years, and every time you see a band that he's in, he just sits supporting everything, and then every once in a while there's something that he sort of pops in, like a fill, or to me that, but it's not obvious. He's not in your face.
Yeah, for me, he comes from this. I think a big part of his influence comes from a lot of the sort of Nordic jazz drummers in Norway and Denmark and Sweden. People like Jon Christensen, who played with Keith Jarrett for many years, and those drummers in the north of Europe who are often much more with the textures and ambience and sounds rather than the sort of, let's say, more classic American jazz drummer, your kind of Art Blakey or that real virtuosic classic American jazz drummer, Blue Note era, amazing time, amazing technique. I think Corey, whilst he loves that, he comes more from this kind of European world where it's, you just hit a cymbal once and he tells a whole story with the sound of it.
Less is more.
Absolutely, less is more. And I
Yeah.
think what's really great with Corey and myself is that we actually have slightly different inspirations, in the sense that I think the initially when we started playing together, it was kind of hard to make it gel. This was about 10 years ago now that we've been working together, but it wasn't love at first sight. It was very interesting. And the same with Tom McCready, the bass player on the album. It didn't gel straight away, and we had a kind of few awkward first gigs together as accompanying other musicians, sax players, trumpet players, and we never thought we'd end up working together so much as we do. And we love playing together now because we have this sort of complementary sound world, where if I'm sort of taking the forefront, Corey and Tom are so supportive to that, and they know what to complement that with. And it's very interesting, that combination of personalities within a band. And this really does feel like a band album to me. It's not
definitely
a mixture of different personalities. And the same with Joe Wright, the saxophone player, who I think is amazing. And he's so non-traditional, as a sax player. He doesn't take loads of, it's not a tenor sax player who takes 6 solos on the album with that muscly sort of brawny tenor saxophone sound inspired by Michael Brecker or Chris Potter. It's very more, he takes inspiration. He's from Aberdeen, and he's got this real sort of Scottish Highlands, almost folky influence in his playing. And
yeah, that's really interesting. And I think there are times when listening to the album, you can't hear what the difference is between the guitar and the sax, that there's almost like that weaving in and out where you can't follow the individual line without the other one taking over, in a beautiful way.
Absolutely. I think that's the magic of Joe, is that it's very hard to find a saxophone player, especially a tenor saxophone player, who is able to slot himself into the group sound as musically as he does. I mean, the first track, Berlin,
I know, I love that.
It's just so fun. Yeah, and you can't even hear there's a saxophone on it because Joe put his sax through some electronic effects, and then we took away the dry original sound of the saxophone. So there's actually sort of electric tenor sax going through the whole track, which you don't necessarily associate with being a saxophone sound, but it's there, ever present through the whole piece, and it adds a lot. But again, because he's not that kind of classic tenor player who it's a lot often about them.
Yes.
Just slots right into the band sound. And I think that for me, that's really important, being a guitar band leader, is not to have a sax player who is able, a la Michael Brecker, to sort of steal the show after about 20 seconds.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of my favorite tracks is, I can't even pronounce it, Synesthesia?
Synesthesia, pretty close.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if that's even a word in English. It's a track that I co-wrote with an Italian drummer, and I know it's a word in Italian, so I kind of attempted to just translate it directly into English. And some people know what it is and others don't. But basically, it's the associating one sense with another sense is what synesthesia is. So, for example, when you hear music, or you hear the sound of a particular chord, you associate it with the color blue or the color red. That's a classic example, is people associating color with sound.
Right, because I know people that have that with numbers and things, don't they? That's what we do all the time, isn't it, with music? That it
absolutely,
reminds you of things.
Absolutely, and for me, this I don't sort of, some people even call it a disorder. So I don't suffer from this disorder. But Enzo, the guy who I wrote it with, he really has this thing with color and sound. So we were at a concert somewhere in North Italy, I think near Milan, and we were in the green room just about to go on stage, and we found this instrument called a hang, which was made famous by the Portico Quartet. Maybe you've heard the Portico Quartet, and they're a great bunch of guys. They went to Middlesex University about 10 years ago and had a bit of success doing this, popularizing this instrument called a hang, which is like a snare drum that you play with a mallet, and it has different tones, and it's sort of tap it around different parts of the drum and you get a different tone. So the particular hang that we found, it had the notes in the melody of synesthesia that so you just went around the drum and it went da 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 like that. And
Wow.
Enzo, as a drummer, obviously had two mallets, two drumsticks ready there at the ready as we were about to go on stage, and he started playing this melody, da 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 da, just going around the drum, sort of repetitively testing the notes, da 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 da
Oh,
da da
wow.
da da. And then we thought, okay, let's make a sort of game out of this, you know. And we've made this little sort of rhythmic cell, as it were, that was like da 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 da. That's how the melody
Oh,
originated,
wow.
and that's why it is a co-composition between the two
Right,
of
yeah.
us,
Okay.
because he kind of gets he was the initial spark that caused the rest of the composition, because I then took that idea and mutated the rhythm and took it into a different scale, and also blended it with a bit of, I had associated it with kind of Indian classical influence, because
Yes.
the track that comes before it is this tempura sort of intro. The fifth track is this sort of
Yeah.
meditative, almost like a raga, you know, the Indian ragas, kind of Ravi Shankar sort of style of, you always set up the sound world with a long out of time introduction, and then, you know, Ravi Shankar would always go into that faster rhythmical melody after having set up the world. So the tempura is the track that introduces the world of
Ah,
synesthesia, and then we
right.
jump into synesthesia properly, and you get that that rhythmic idea that I told you about from Enzo, and we you know, the rest is history. I just
Yeah.
composed it, and Corey Dick came up with loads of other rhythmic ideas. He should really be credited as another co-composer, but I stole the limelight there. But um, he came up with great ideas for the arrangement, and also Joe Webb plays an amazing piano solo on the
Yes.
album as well.
Yeah. It's very frenetic. It's very modern. It feels very very contemporary, but it
Yeah,
also has some harking back. It's like
well,
that
it's like that.
true. Sorry,
Yeah,
go
it's
on.
like you're saying. No, I totally agree. And it's like I say, it starts with that Indian classical influence that's kind of familiar to us all, and then it moves into this more contemporary jazz, sort of gritty. Probably the closest I get to that kind of American modern jazz sound on the album is this track, like you say, the busyness and the
Yeah.
frenetic nature of it in the middle of the track, and then to get out of that and back to the more meditative state that it starts with. I in the studio when we were recording, I found this incredible old school vintage processor, which was popularized by Radiohead in the 90s, called a Roland Space Echo. And you send the whole master track, you know, you're recording, to bits of outboard hardware, and it's called a Space Echo, and it's a kind of, it's like analog tape, you know, it's running tape,
Yeah.
and you put the master track into the tape, and the Space Echo, what it does is you play around with one of the pots, the potentiometers on it, and you mess around with that, and it kind of jumbles the tape, you know, like when you roll a cassette
Oh
tape out
yeah.
wrong, and
Yeah.
it takes ages to get it back
Oh
to
yeah.
how it should be. That thing, a
Yeah.
Space Echo, it basically does that. Then it automatically puts it back into order at the end. So you could actually open up the hardware of it, and you see it when the track's going through it. The tape goes in, and then it kind of goes all around and gets all jumbled up and stuck together, and then it gets put back together and goes out the other side of the tape
Wow.
machine and goes back into the computer. The end of my solo, you can hear this weird sort of guitar effect kind of on the
Yes.
track, and that's that. And Radiohead really
Ah,
popularized that about 20 years ago, and it was just happened to be lying around in the studio, and I thought, I've got to mess around with this because I'm a huge Radiohead fan, and
right.
I've never had the chance to sort of twiddle about with the knobs on this Roland Space Echo, so I just seized the moment in the studio, and it happened to work, you know,
Brilliant.
slightly gratuitous, but
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
yeah.
One of the things I really like on the album is your use of the voice. So in two of the tracks, you've got a female voice, but it's not a song. It's a voice
Yeah,
as an instrument.
yeah. Again, that's another sound that I really love, is that, vocalese, wordless vocals thing. And I actually, I love the vocals, but 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 I love the I'm in there as well in the mix. I'm singing an octave below her. What I love to do on gigs with the band is we often always sing these wordless melodies or hum them together on stage when we're playing live, and that was just meant to be represented on the album. And because a lot of the instruments like tenor sax and guitar are quite low, I wanted to hear the sound of the melodies an octave higher, which is obviously perfect for the female voice.
Yeah.
So I got Luna in kind of last minute, and just, you know, when we were mixing it, we're about to actually sort of print it onto CD, and I said, no, I need these melodies to pop out of the texture more. So Luna came in and saved the day. And
brilliant.
It's again a real harking back to that Pat Metheny group sound, isn't it? I mean, Metheny on a lot of his albums had I think Nana Vasconcelos, Brazilian percussionist.
Yes.
He often used to sing the melodies with Pat's guitar sound, and I love that sound of wordless vocals and guitar. And just kind of, you can't, I guess as a guitarist, you can't escape a bit of a Metheny influence sometimes, you know.
Absolutely.
It's always
can't go
there,
wrong.
ever present.
Yeah. So that album, Life is the Dancer, is out now, and you know, obviously people can get hold of it, and people should. I think it's a wonderful introduction to jazz for somebody who says I don't like jazz. I think this album is a really nice way in, because there's so much else going on.
Yeah, I think especially coming from rock and coming from folk or classical, it's got lots of different ways in. So there's a bit of a British folk influence, you know, John Martin, Nick Drake, those kind of English folk singers. There's a bit of that influence, and so if you want to come into jazz via that or through rock, it's everything's kind of, there's different ways in, basically.
Yes, exactly.
It's a gateway drug. It's a gateway drug.
Absolutely. So what's next? So you said you've got a few gigs coming up in Europe.
Yes.
Have you got any sort of big plans?
I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
I'm very excited because next Wednesday will be my first gig. I should say July the 9th will be my first concert since March the 8th.
Wow.
And for me, I mean, people that know me, especially my close friends, they used to call me two or three gigs a day Luft, you know, because it was like, the old joke actually about me was that I'd have 2 bad gigs and 1 good gig every day.
Right.
So now I've got 4 gigs this month, and I'm ecstatic about it. You know, the prospect of having 4 in a month is kind of incredibly exciting. So I'm starting here in Albania, in the capital, with Alina. We're going to play in Tirana next week, and that's just in duo. And then we're going to go directly to Italy to play. No, I tell a lie. We're going to go to Switzerland to play in Lausanne at an incredible sort of concert series where the concerts happen at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning.
Oh, wow.
So I'm again, that's going to be another first for me, playing so early in the morning.
Well, it's playing early at 6 a.m. when it's not after, you know, a gig the night before, you know, where you're still up.
It's not Ronnie Scott's Late Show where you don't start till 1 a.m. It's the real, you know, go to bed, get up at 4 a.m., do the sound check, and the concert starts at 6 a.m. On a Sunday. So it's kind of Sunday service, Sunday sermon. And I'll start by saying, let us play.
Yes.
Exactly. Wow. Although the English jokes will never go down very well in other countries, so I will refrain from that. But then we're going to play 2 concerts in Italy.
Right.
At the end of the month in Modena, where the balsamic vinegar comes from.
Oh, okay.
So I'll be stocking up on lots of balsamic vinegar, and then going to then that's it actually. And then actually I have another album coming out later this year.
Oh, tell me about that.
Yeah, so that's very exciting because we're hoping to go from the north of Italy via train to the south of France, where we will be mixing a new album with Elena, my partner, who's an ECM Records artist. Okay. So we've recorded an album for ECM in February, just before the lockdown. So we're going to hopefully be in August mixing with Manfred Eicher, the founder of ECM, mixing in their sort of go-to studio in Avignon in the south of France.
Fabulous.
where we recorded in late February. We did 2-day session. That's with Fred Thomas on piano, great English piano player. And you know Fred, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then with a Swiss trumpet player who's not well known over in Britain, but his name is Mathieu Michel. He's kind of like the Keddy Wheeler of Switzerland. He's a sort of old, small guy who plays flugelhorn. And
oh, lovely.
And so that blends really beautifully with all my guitar effects. And Alina's got a wonderful, quite a low voice for a girl, I guess. And so it's a very meditative, classic ECM sort of 45-minute, 50-minute album, and that's due out in November. So that's the next big project. And crossing our fingers, we can do concerts by that point.
Well, yes, let's hope so. I'll check out Alina as well online and take a look at her stuff. So
yeah, I can even, while we're on this, before we go, in the little chat window here, I'll put a couple of links to videos of us playing a couple of songs in duo on YouTube. We play a mixture of Albanian and Kosovo folk songs combined with our own original compositions.
Oh wow, lovely.
Yes,
brilliant.
It's a bit of a journey, like all my music, a bit of a journey to another one.
I mean, I must admit, I really liked Life is the Dancer, but I did feel like I want to know what's next. Do you know what I mean? It sort of felt like, where are we going with this? Where's, what's happened? What's next?
Absolutely, I totally understand. And what I would say is that Life is the Dancer is actually meant to be a kind of follow-up to Riser, which was my first album, which I released in 2017. And so many people said to me, oh, you've got to do another album with the quintet. You've got to do another album with the quintet, that I was so spurred on by that I did. And the quintet, like I say, is kind of my home stadium band, where I bring all the influences from my other projects back to my quintet.
Right.
And the next step for me is really, because I've been working lots with Alina for the last 3 years in duo, I wanted to record something of that. And we've been so active touring in Europe and in the UK that we really wanted to record that. And obviously having the backing of a record label like ECM behind us is a big plus. So
sure.
They were really enthusiastic about the project and put us in the studio. And we actually spent the whole of January in a kind of artificial lockdown. We didn't do any gigs for the whole of January, and we did dry January, didn't drink any alcohol, and wrote a load of music together.
Oh, brilliant.
In sobriety. And we thought, this is great. We're going to be touring all year. 2020 is our year. I was a real one of those people, that said 2020 is my year.
Yeah.
And it obviously isn't my year, but in some way it still is my year, because we wrote this beautiful music together. We're kind of, sort of John and Paul style. I wrote the melodies, and I wrote the harmonies. She wrote the melodies and the lyrics, and or vice versa or whatever. And we kind of together wrote this music in January. And we were so set on world domination this year, touring this new music around. But nonetheless, we're hoping that it'll be released in the autumn, in November.
Yeah, lovely.
November. So that'll be the next step. And then who knows, after that, there are other plans for next year as well, to do something also again on Edition Records, the label that released Life is the Dancer, with the quintet, or maybe something with Tom and Corey, with Alina. Maybe that's sort of, there's other stuff on the horizon bubbling, but at the moment it's all slightly uncertain. And as we said at the beginning, it's Life is the Dancer, you are the dance at this point, day to day.
Absolutely. Well, that was fantastic. It was really, really good to speak to you, Rob. Thank you so much.
Yeah, not a problem.
And I'll put a link in the show notes for the podcast to the album, and
Brilliant.
Everything. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Not at all. I'm looking forward to hearing the podcast, and I'll make sure I'll send those links to you as well.
Yeah, please do. Myself. Yeah, fab. Well, you've got my email address anyway, so you can.
I'll do it to email. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Lovely. Thanks so
Hilary.
much. Okay.
Great to chat to you.
Yeah, you too. Bye. Well, that was Rob Luft, sitting in Albania. And it was amazing to talk to him. It was a really good experience. It was a great conversation. Every week, I think my conversations can't get any better, and they do. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to this week's. And please do check out the links that are in the show notes, so that you can hear some of Rob's music and see some of the videos. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.